All right, well, let's go ahead and get this party started. I want to say hello and welcome everyone to the Cox Talent Acquisition webinar. Thank you guys on the East Coast for having lunch with us. On the West Coast, thanks for having breakfast with us. But today you're going to learn some expert tips on how to land not a job, not the job, but your dream job. Isn't that exciting? I know it's definitely exciting to me. All right. So we have two excellent presenters for you today. Eric Wall, he's a talent acquisition recruiter. He's going to give you some recruiter tips, give you some insight to help you land that dream job. And Monica Portman, she's the senior director of product management. She's definitely done some hiring. So she's going to discuss what she looks for, and she's going to give you some tips on how to get hired. Now, me, I am Cedric Castile. I'm the talent sourcer for Cox Enterprises. I'm going to be your host, your moderator. I'm going to keep this thing moving right on along today. All right. Now, at the conclusion, there's going to be a Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. There's also going to be a link to our talent community. So please join. That's going to keep you updated on things we have going on here at Cox, job openings, and things of that nature. We're also going to have some open requisitions. So if you see a job in there that fits your skill set, looks like a dream job to you, feel free to log on to that and apply. So let's get it started. So Cox Enterprises is made up of Cox Communication and Cox Automotive. Now, Cox Communication is the largest privately held broadband company in America. We provide internet, phone, home security, and home automation to over 6 million residences across 18 states. Cox Automotive, that's our global automotive branch. Cox Auto is home to brands such as Auto Trader, Kelley Blue Book, Manheim, DealerTrack, and a host of other companies that are focused on changing the way people buy and sell cars. Cox, we're a dedicated group of people all focused on a single goal, building a better future for the next generation. How do we do that? By disrupting industries, by treating our employees as our most important resource. One thing I think that's important for you guys to know is Cox is an employee-first company. Not only do we promote internal mobility, but we encourage it. A fun fact is about nearly 50% of Cox employees find their next job at another Cox company. I always think that's very, very cool. And now that you know what we do, this is a little bit about who we are. You know, I mentioned that we're an employee first company, but we're also community focused. Giving back is a vital part of our culture. Through the James M. Cox Foundation and Team Cox, we volunteer. I've had the opportunity to build jungle gyms for schools, to pack meals for the homeless. We do a lot of different things in the community, and that's what we believe in. That's who we are. And now that you know a little bit about us, I'm going to bring up Monica Portman. She's the Senior Director of Product Management, and she does a lot of hiring. So she's going to share with you what she looks for and how to get hired. Monica, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Cedric. So I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking about how to get hired. So you've landed that interview. Now what do you do? Well, don't go in blind. Take time to prepare ahead of time. Here are 4 things to think about as you're preparing for that interview. First of all, research the company, their mission statement, and their values. It's important to know what you're getting into. It will also help formulate any questions you may have and whether or not it's a good fit. If you know who you're interviewing with, learn more about them. LinkedIn's a great resource for this, and so is the company website. So understand their past experiences. See if you have any commonalities with them. Review the job description. Make sure you're familiar with the tools mentioned in the role in the job description. Link some past experiences to the job description. Think about how you are a really good fit. Identify any gaps that may exist and think through how you're going to address them if that comes up. Finally, figure out what your personal story is. This one is really important and often gets overlooked. What's your value proposition? Hiring managers review a lot of resumes and typically have several interviews for any given position. So how are you going to stand out as different? How are you going to deliver value to the hiring manager? And how are you going to deliver value to the company? Anyone can go in answering the same questions to these interview questions, or having the same answers to those interview questions, but that personal story could be the differentiator. So before moving on, we're going to do a quick poll. Do you know what STAR stands for? And I'll give you a little hint. It has nothing to do with outer space. Great. Over almost 60% of you actually know what the STAR technique is. So let's just get into it. STAR is a tool that you can use in framing your answers to situational and behavior questions. Use this format. I'll let you read through this slide. I'm not going to go through it, but use this format to present your answer. Here's a great example. So you're in an interview and the interviewer throws out a question. Tell me about a time you had to collaborate with a coworker who was difficult to work with. Well, one answer could be, I had to work with a really difficult programmer. Eventually, I was able to get transferred to another department and get some real work done. I don't think that's what you want to answer in an interview. Use the STAR technique and reframe the answer to that question and try this out. I had to work with another programmer who complained a lot about our projects. I took the time to get to know him, and it turned out he was going through some tough personal things. Once I got to know him, I found he was a great coworker. We ended up working so well together that afterwards, we were the most efficient programming pair in the company. Using the STAR format the outcome on how you answered that question was reframed in a positive way. And here, a couple other tips. If you don't actually know the answer, don't make it up. Don't pretend to know. It's actually okay saying you don't know. It's much better than making something up. Another key thing is in today's environment, virtual interviews are really common. Here are some additional tips when interviewing virtually. Test your technology. Nothing is worse than trying to log in to find out that you can't get in, and then you end up being late. Make sure your sound, surroundings, and lighting are good. Make sure your background is tidy. Feel free to use backgrounds and minimize any distractions. As I mentioned earlier, be prepared. You can have notes in front of you, but don't read answers from your notes verbatimly. You don't want to come across as overly rehearsed. Practice, but don't memorize the questions. You want things to come across very naturally. One thing that people tend to lose track of is their body language, especially when you're on a video call. Maintain eye contact by focusing on the camera when talking. And if you're planning on taking notes, that's great. Sometimes it's good to let the interviewer know ahead of time. So when you do look down to take notes, they know you're not breaking eye contact without good cause. Dress as if you would for a real in-person interview. Try to connect with the interviewer. Earlier, I had mentioned doing some research to see if you can find any commonality. Don't be afraid to have a short side conversation about common interests. It's actually a great way to start the interview instead of getting right into business. It'll actually differentiate yourself from other candidates because the interviewer will make a personal bond with you, and that'll create a memorable experience as they go through the interview process. Because you never know if you're first or last in an interview. And making those memorable moments are really important. Finally, follow up within 24 hours of your interview with a note of thanks. Use the opportunity to bring up the connection you made with that individual, or maybe even respond to a challenge that you learned that came up during the conversation and respond to how you could help the interviewer or the company with that challenge. So you've gone through the interview. How are you going to impress a hiring manager? Provide specific examples to support your skill set. All too often during interviews, I see people saying they have a skill set, but when then they're asked how they've used that skill set or for specific examples, they can't. You lose credibility when you do that. Always quantify what you've accomplished in your roles and projects. Companies want employees that can drive outcomes and results. And if you can prove that over and over, whether it's tied to your specific roles or projects that you did, quantify that as much as possible, whether in terms of revenue, cost savings, percentages. Think through that as you're preparing for your interview. And finally, demonstrate your willingness to learn. Again, we talked about providing examples for the skill sets and tools, but it's actually okay to admit that you don't know. Hiring managers also want to know, potential employees are willing to grow and develop. So it's important to make sure that you demonstrate that willingness to learn, especially on things that came up during the interview that you may not be filling, or that may be a gap with you. So, you've gone through the interview, you've tried to impress the manager. The next thing I would say is always come prepared with questions to ask. I'm not going to read through all of these, but here are some examples of questions you can prepare for going into the interview. While you're taking notes throughout the interviews, as you think of other things, you make sure you notate them. So, take a moment right now, screenshot these so you have them in your back pocket. And with that, then I'll hand it over to Eric Wall.
Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon, depending on what coast you're on. My name is Eric Wall. I am one of the Cox Talent Acquisition recruiters for Cox Enterprises. I'm going to get into some of the tips for recruiters, some of the things we look at when I'm recruiting, when I'm reviewing resumes. As you can mention, as a recruiter, I do review a lot of resumes. So get into a little bit of tips, tricks, how to get in on the job that you desire. So the first and foremost, everyone has always heard of a resume. I'm going to cover some tips on how to present your resume, what to go over, and some must-have and optional items that you're going to want to include. As you can see there, rule number one, always, and I cannot stress this enough, when you're applying for a job, always upload or submit your resume, whether it's uploading it through an applicant tracking system that a company may use or submitting it to a recruiter that you may be working with. This is sort of your formalized business card that is going to not only showcase more information that is going to be available than what would be on an application through an online system or portal, but it also is the one item that's going to be the most heavily circulated internally. And the goal for the resume is you want as many eyeballs as you can on that within a company. That is also going to draw attention and possibly get you into a job that you desire. So always upload a resume. I review a lot of applications, and unfortunately, some people don't upload or submit a resume. So always try to upload or submit a resume. Those get downloaded, as I mentioned, and also get passed around internally. We're going to cover some of the must-have items here for the resume. The first is going to be the header and contact info. At the top of your resume, you always want to include a header containing your name, your contact information, typically your phone number, personal email address, and sometimes links to social profiles or personal websites such as LinkedIn and so forth. Another thing too, I'll point out for an email that you are going to put on your resume, make sure it isn't a professional email, not like something like Bugs Bunny 44 or 27. Make sure it's something containing your name or something resembling your name. That's going to be a good representation of yourself. After all, you don't want there to be any confusion over who the resume belongs to, or to make it difficult for recruiters or hiring managers to reach out to you. However, you may want to avoid putting your contact information in the header or footer of the document itself. The header or footers can sometimes be overlooked by the software, or if a company doesn't deploy a software that scans your resume. The next item here is a professional summary. A professional summary is going to be a brief 1 to 3 sentence section featured prominently on your resume that describes who you are, what you do, and why you're a perfect match for the role. In contrast with the largely out-of-date objective statement, which has been used previously, the professional summary is kind of the new evolution, and it's a line that describes the type of career opportunity you're looking for. Professional summaries, they aren't about what you want. That's the big key item. Instead, try to focus them on the value that you could bring to a potential employer. It's worth noting that a professional summary isn't an absolute must-have. If your resume is missing one, it probably won't be a deal breaker, but it can be a nice way to give time-pressed recruiters and hiring managers a quick and high-level overview of why you're the right person for the job. Moving down there to the skills. Once relegated to the bottom of resumes as an afterthought, the skills section has become more and more important. as recruiters and hiring managers are increasingly looking for candidates with specialized backgrounds. Rather than make the folks reading your resume hunt through your bullet points to find the skills that you can bring to the table, it's best to just clearly list them. If they see them right away, you have the ability to get the job done. You're more likely to have your resume taken more seriously. Moving on to the next one here, work experience. This is probably the most critical section of a resume, and this is where you're going to detail your work history in a consistent and compelling format. The work experience section should include company names, location, employment dates, roles or titles you have held, and most importantly, bullet points containing action verbs and data points that detail the relevant accomplishments of each position. This portion is essential for recruiters and hiring managers who look to absorb information about your career experiences and connect your skills to what they're looking for in a potential hire. Recruiters like myself, we're often flooded with resume submissions, and we have to carefully comb through those and identify qualified candidates in a crowded pack. So make sure your work experience stands out. Definitely highlight any quantitative or data numbers if it's a sales roles and achievements in this area. Moving on to the next bullet point, there is education. Since many jobs require a certain level of education, it's important to mention your academic credentials on your resume. However, this section shouldn't take up too much. In most cases, simply listing where you went to school, when you attended, and what degree you attained will be sufficient. But education also very important as it pertains to many positions. And then finally, additional experience. An optional but potentially very valuable addition to your resume is additional experience. This is a catch-all section at the tail end of your resume that allows you to highlight your volunteer experience, awards, and hobbies. Kind of shows you a little bit about who you are outside of work and what you might be interested in. Again, it shouldn't be too long. You don't want it to detract from your skills or work experience, but it can be a good way to provide a well-rounded picture of who you are. And then optional is the picture, headshot. Resumes with a headshot, I have seen, they do show that you are in a professional working environment, working for that position. It does give a good representation of who you may be to the recruiter or the hiring manager. But again, totally optional on that. The big things there are going to be those must-have items. All right, now we're going to move on to the design tips for the resumes. Design tips here, and feel free to screenshot any of this information here. You're going to want to start off with an easy to read font of no less than 11 points font size. So make sure, you don't want your resume to have recruiters or hiring managers squinting to try to read what's contained on it. So make sure it's in an easy to readable font. You can actually Google or go on Google. There's a lot of resources too out there about fonts and the art of fonts and what fonts are the easiest to read. So just make sure it's an easy to read font, no less than 11 points. I always try to encourage people to shoot for 12 or higher. That's kind of a nice medium, but that's going to be very important there. The next item is going to be margins. Margins on your resume, especially a paper format, should be at least 0.7 inches. You're okay going up to a 1-inch margin, but you do want that some sort of boundary around the outside of your resume that kind of contains everything nice and neat into that document. Make sure there's sufficient white space between sections. So you don't want to overcrowd two sections or between work, education, additional experience. You kind of want to have them evenly spaced consistently throughout the resume. And then don't go overboard with intricate designs or decorations. You want to keep this professional using, usually black ink or black font size color. So don't get overboard on any intricate designs from that perspective. And then if you're going to print out copies of your resume, invest in good paper. Use a high quality printer. Kinko's, there's many other places out there that actually sell not only this high quality paper, but they'll also print it on it for you. So do take some time if you are going to hard copy your resume to invest in a good quality paper and use a high quality ink. The next bullet point here, keep your resume to 1 to 2 pages max. We've all heard there's myths about keeping a resume to 1 page or 2 page. Some roles may actually require more, such as like federal jobs where you can get up to like 5 or 6 to 10 pages. But for the most part, try to keep your resume to 1 to 2 pages max. And the key word is going to be kind of just summarize all those things I went over on the previous slide. And then the final bullet point, this is my favorite. You know, everyone has Microsoft Word or has used a word processing. They have templates on there. However, you want to try to find something unique that is going to help you stand out. And you may not know how to create something unique. Well, there's a solution for that. And if any of you have heard of Etsy or been on the Etsy.com website, you can actually go on there and search for resume templates. The options are endless. These are people who create templates and they sell them sometimes as little as $5 for you to download, and then you would just plug in your information. This is going to differentiate you from standard word processing documents or templates that you may come across. And then talk about the ROI, something that's $5 to download. You're not only supporting that artist and that small business who's created that, but the ROI on potentially landing a job that's going to pay a lot more than $5 an hour is going to be very important. So do take the time. If you aren't able to come up with anything creative, that's a great resource. Check out Etsy.com. There's a lot of resume templates for you to review and pick one that you think would work best for your desired position or application. All right, so now we're going to get into the LinkedIn profile. As Monica mentioned, LinkedIn is a very important part of finding a position. As a recruiter, LinkedIn is something I spend a lot of time on, just scoring through, trying to find talent. On the recruiter side, they have what's called a LinkedIn Recruiter, where you can start stringing together search strings such as qualifications, education, locations desired, open to work, remote to work. All those things can come up and we can search through those using those different objectives. So the LinkedIn profile, many recruiters are on this a lot. So you want to make sure this thing is real nice and tidy. And I'm going to go over a couple things here that is going to make your LinkedIn profile stand out. So the first thing is going to be your profile photo. This is your first impression. And this is probably the most important piece of your LinkedIn profile. Not everyone you interact with on LinkedIn will visit your profile or actually click on to deep dive into your profile, but they will see your photo. And I'll get into kind of talking about the LinkedIn photo in a little bit, but you do want to make sure you have a photo uploaded for that profile. LinkedIn research shows that just by having a picture makes your profile 14 times more likely to be viewed by others. And I have two examples there. We have Shaq and Oprah. You want to keep your profile photo to take up about 60% of that circle. So Oprah and Shaq there both have a great, I guess you could say, photo. And then the background image too, you also want to have something that kind of shows either what you're interested in or what your current position is. As you can see Shaq there, he is on the NBA TNT broadcast team. So that's him in his office. And then Oprah, she has more of a, I guess, healing or more of a generic type background there, but you don't want to leave it blank. So either option would be great. But try to have it something around those lines. It brings attention to your profile when they click on it, and it invites someone to look deeper in. All right, so we're going to talk about the LinkedIn profile here in a little bit more in depth. First, you want to pick a photo that looks like you. Ideally, this should be done in professional attire. Profiles with photos, like I said, 14 times more likely to be viewed. So pick a photo that looks like you, pick a photo in professional attire that's going to be a good representation of yourself. The next thing you're going to want to do is make sure it's a high resolution image. There's many resources out there to get a high resolution image taken. If you aren't able to do that, you can have, with iPhones or Androids nowadays, they're able to take high resolution photos. You want to just make sure you're standing against maybe a solid color background, but you definitely want a high resolution picture for your image. And then moving on here, like I said, make sure your face takes up at least 60% of the frame. That's going to be front and center on your photo and when searching. So make sure it takes up a great chunk of that frame. And then the other thing too, be the only person in your picture. Don't use a photo where you have cropped out other people. Make sure you're the only one in the picture. Again, another key item that's going to make you stand out. And then, as I mentioned, if you need to, you can get someone else to take the photo for you or use a tripod. You're going to want to make sure, it's a straight, both vertically and horizontally picture. And just, like I said, really emphasizing on that professional photo for your profile. And then moving down here, choose the right expression. So whether you're smiling or straight-faced, you would just want to make sure your facial expression is inviting for people to view your profile. As I mentioned, when I was reviewing Shaq and Oprah's profile, you kind of want to avoid distracting backgrounds. The plain background default that LinkedIn gives you is, I think, just a gray box. So definitely, I encourage people to put a background of something that they're interested in or the current position, something that's going to make you stand out. But avoid distracting backgrounds where it takes away from the overall message of what you're trying to convey in your LinkedIn profile. The next point over here, wear what you would wear to work. Dress in a professional attire. You don't want to obviously be in swim trunks and flip-flops like you're out on a day on the beach. You're really angling for a position with a company, so you want to represent yourself possibly in the best way that you can. So wear what you would wear to work, keep it professional. That's going to go a long way. The next item here, take a photo in soft and natural light. So you don't want to be, I guess it's too light or too dark. You want to have kind of that neutral, natural, soft light. More so maybe even on the warmer side if you need to. It's a little bit more inviting, but take a photo in a soft, natural light setting. And then finally, use filters wisely. Many apps out there, photo apps, even LinkedIn itself, allows you to put filters on. Use those filters wisely. Again, I always try to just default to kind of just pick a photo that looks like you, high resolution, professional attire, and 60% of the frame. Those are going to be key bullet points that you're going to want to focus on when picking or shooting your LinkedIn profile photo. All right, so, and feel free to screenshot this. This is kind of just a checklist of things you're gonna wanna just review constantly, not just a one-time thing, but constantly going through these, making sure all these sections of your LinkedIn profile are up to speed. So as we mentioned, upload your photo covered on the previous slide. The next item here is customize your public profile URL. The address should look something like www.linkedin.com/your name, your last name, initials, but you have the ability to change your URL on your LinkedIn profile. By default, it's just going to lay out a bunch of numbers and characters, but you can actually shorten that, LinkedIn John Doe, or using a URL that's similar to your name or initials. That's going to really be able to help recruiters find you and find your profile and help with searching. So definitely take the time to customize your public profile URL. The next thing here, enhance your profile with additional sections. And displaying further information such as accomplishments, skills, volunteer experience, certifications, expertise can also increase the amount of time to view your profile. As I mentioned, as recruiters, we're looking for those things when we search. So definitely take the time to enhance your profile by adding those additional sections. This in turn can help you also build your network and connect you to new opportunities. Elaborate on your work history and experience section. So unlike the resume where we want to keep it short to a couple bullet points, LinkedIn, you actually want to go a little bit more in detail. And you actually want to use targeted keywords in your work history on LinkedIn, because that's going to also enable you to be found by search engines and through recruiters looking for specific terms. So use targeted keywords, include specific information about what you've done in your previous positions that led to measurable and quantifiable results. You don't want to lie about titles or duties. I would always try to keep it honest on these things. You'll likely get called out by old colleagues and it could be embarrassing. So keep it factual. Definitely talk about your achievements, measurable results. This is going to be the section where you want to elaborate on. Education, just like in the resume, but you want to include it in reverse chronological order. Any programs or schools you went to. As I mentioned, a lot of positions may require a certain level of academic certification or degree. So definitely make sure you have your education in there. Next section down, customize your skills and endorsement section. And LinkedIn actually gives you an option where you can go in and do this. And you want to ensure that a relevant list of your skills on your profile allows others in your network to endorse you. Skills with the most endorsements actually rise to the top, and they will be listed first. So this will also help others understand your strengths and be able to match you with the right opportunities. And then finally here, include recommendations. These should come from former supervisors, coworkers, clients, vendors, professors, or even fellow students. Basically, anyone who will have a good thing or good things to say about you and your work, definitely you want to include those. And I believe LinkedIn also gives you the opportunity to request a recommendation. So if you do know any of your colleagues, professors, coworkers, clients that would give you a recommendation, those things also stand out as well on your LinkedIn profile. All right, so we talked about the LinkedIn profile. Now we're going to talk about researching companies and applying for jobs and how you can find the perfect company for you. Let's face it, most people would like to understand the company they want to work for someday. Things such as culture, opportunities for advancement, career growth, work-life balance, and a company's involvement in the local community are very important. There are a few websites not only to research companies, but also allow you to apply to the positions that may be open within that company. On the left here, we'll see is Glassdoor. Many of you may be familiar with Glassdoor. It's kind of like the gold standard of reviews of a company. I kind of compare it to like the Yelp, I guess you would say, of company reviews. There's going to be a lot of things in Glassdoor that are going to be able to give you an idea on everything from culture to potentially opportunities for growth, what the management structure is like, what their approval is of the leadership of that company, and then also reviews from both current and former coworkers are going to be included. So Glassdoor is a great resource to check out and kind of align yourself, with what you're looking for. We mentioned LinkedIn and Indeed. I'll get into Indeed. Indeed is another platform that we recruiters often use. Indeed profiles are, you can customize them similar to LinkedIn. They have a little bit more differentiation, I guess, but definitely use LinkedIn, I would say, as your primary, and Indeed also as well. Indeed, you're going to be able to find jobs and apply for them. Most companies will post their positions to both platforms. I believe we at Cox also do, but Indeed does also provide some resources and allows you to set job alerts on any company that you may not have an online portal for which you can apply. Some of the other ones I'll highlight here, ZipRecruiter, I'm sure many of you are familiar with, is another platform that we will pull resumes from and look for attractive talent for our positions. Fairy Godboss is a platform that's designed for females and female entrepreneurs to get them into the workforce and get them into positions. That's a very good resource. Comparely is another one that I use to compare companies and whatnot. And then the Muse is another cool one. Many people may not have heard of the Muse, but the Muse actually allows you to explore companies virtually, their offices, before you even apply. They actually have virtual tours, so you could see what the office looks like, if they got a good break room, if they have any foosball or pool tables, stuff like that. You can see kind of how the office is structured of where you potentially could be working. And then the other thing I'll mention too is another great resource is a company called Great Place to Work. They're one of the kind of also a gold standards, and they actually annually review companies and give them awards and accolades on places to work. And they're going to be recognized or looking to recognize companies with great culture. So definitely check out Great Place to Work. That's going to give you a lot of in-depth knowledge on the culture of a company. All right, so we've covered the resumes, we've covered LinkedIn profiles. Now we're going to talk about how you want to build out your own network. In other words, finding an in to the job you want. So first over here, you got to get gutsy. Research hiring managers, reach out and introduce yourself. Nobody gets a position by not making contacts. So you want to reach out, get gutsy. Find out if you're applying for maybe an entry-level position, find out who the supervisor is. If you're applying for an executive position, maybe find out who the director or VP is. But you got to get out, get gutsy, get out there and start kind of broadcasting what you would like to do and what you can bring to the company, and introduce yourself. And that's going to kind of go a long way. There's that old saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. But that all starts with getting gutsy and introducing yourself. So you got to get out there, make your presence known, and let people know you're interested in the job. The next thing over here is organic relationships, mutual connections. Do you know someone in common that may work for a company that you're interested in? Reach out to them. Mutual connections can be very beneficial. They can also be an endorsement internally within the company as a referral. Those type of relationships will bear a lot of fruit. So definitely, if you have mutual connections with people that are in the company that you're desiring to work for, reach out, introduce yourself, and then talk about kind of what the opportunities they may know of, or ways to angle yourself to get in touch with a hiring manager recruiter. So another good tip there. The next one over is follow the companies you're interested in. And maybe this more so applies to LinkedIn, but definitely follow the companies that you're interested in. And we as recruiters, when we go on LinkedIn and LinkedIn Recruiter, we can actually see, if a person is following our company or if it's another company, we can see what kind of companies they're following. And that's obviously going to show interest to the recruiter that not only are you keeping up to date on what the company's doing, but you're showing interest in the overall company itself. So take the time to follow companies. Those companies too, they'll show up in your feed. They'll present and share information about their company. That's also great icebreakers and things to talk about too if you get to an interview on stuff you may have learned or noticed that a company may be doing that has you interested. So definitely follow companies that you're interested in. And then finally, keep in touch with coworkers, friends, classmates, professors, people out there that can help you get into a job. And you want to keep in touch with these folks, coworkers, classmates. If people have branched out after college, they may end up working for a position or in a company that you may desire. And then kind of the sixth rule is, every sixth person, usually knows someone else. So by keeping in touch with these folks, you're just expanding your network even greater. So I always encourage to keep in touch with folks that you may have encountered in past, and they may be able to kind of angle you into a job you desire. All right, so we covered a lot there. I'm going to kick it over back to Cedric, who's going to talk to you about how to apply.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you so much, Monica. That was very valuable information. I hope that everyone found some value there and helping you get to that dream job. So, you have to apply. For Cox, you want to visit jobs.coxenterprises.com. You can search by keyword, location. You can look in our featured career areas and find a job that fits your skill set, something that you're interested in, something that you would like to pursue, and go ahead and apply for it. When you find a career posting that aligns with your skill set, always apply for it, and just kind of echoing something Eric said, when you are submitting your resume for consideration, take some time, find out who those managers are, who those recruiters are, the different people who are decision makers, and they can definitely, that'll definitely help you out. It's always nice to have a warm intro instead of a cold one. So thank you guys so much for all that insight and all that information. And we're going to open it up for questions now. I saw that we have quite a few. We have quite a few questions. And here's one. Here's the first one. So you know what? I actually like this question because I answer it quite a bit as a talent sourcer. So this one says, I know exactly what my dream job is, but I have no idea how to get there. Can you give any advice? I'll take this one, guys, if you don't mind. My advice, and this is also a testament of how important LinkedIn is. Everyone who's spoken today has had something to say about LinkedIn, but you can use LinkedIn as a roadmap. You can search by job title. So I would advise you to go on, take a look at some people that are in that role now, scroll down and kind of look at their journey, see where they started, where they got promoted to, what they did next, and that is a great way to kind of make your own roadmap to get you where you're trying to go. So that's a great question, and I hope that answer helps you out. Here's another one. Is it okay to use colors on a resume? And is there something as talking too much on a resume? You want to take that one, Eric?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So it's kind of it's tough to answer. It's a little bit of a broad question. Colors are totally fine on a resume. As I mentioned too, you'll see If you look at templates, even on Etsy, there are colors on a resume. I guess the big thing is just don't go overboard where it's taking away or detracting from the overall message of what your resume is trying to convey. So, I mean, it's kind of a fine in between. I usually always try to say, if you're going to do some sort of design or template, those type of colors are fine. But as far as like the text, I would traditionally keep it black or blue, just like you would with ink, because you don't want to take away from the overall message. You're more so just trying to get the information out, and there'll be time to show your creativity later. But as far as templates go and the design of a resume, that is a little bit different. There's, if you want to highlight, if it's a marketing job, for example, you're going for marketing or maybe digital marketing, that job may require you may want to showcase a little bit more of your design or creativity. So I guess it kind of just depends on what job you're applying for. Design wise, totally fine. Font wise, I would keep usually just using black or blue font is going to be pretty acceptable. And then if you don't mind, what was the second part of that question?
The second part, I think that was it.
Okay.
Oh no, I'm sorry, you're right. And is there something known as talking too much on a resume?
Yeah, I would say try to keep it between 1 to 2 pages. You want to really highlight what you've done, the results you've driven, and the data. And then just maybe a bullet point about what your duties or responsibilities were. I wouldn't get too overboard into talking too much about your resume, because like I said, you want to keep it between 1 to 2 pages. If you have projects, if you're applying to a job like marketing or advertising and you have projects, you can put like links in there and allow hiring managers and recruiters will click on those links where you maybe have like, let's say, a folder shared where your projects are located or things that you've worked on, or maybe you've written reports or done studies, academic studies. So I would definitely try to use links if you can. Maybe store those type of stuff that you really want to highlight in a link and put that on your resume. That will keep it concise. But yeah, definitely try to keep it in between 1 to 2 pages. Now, I know some jobs, especially federal jobs, they require a lengthy resume. But I think for most jobs, you're going to be good with 1 to 2 pages. If your resume is over 1 to 2 pages, it's still going to get reviewed. We review every resume as long as it meets minimum requirements. So I just try to, as a rule of thumb, try to keep it between 1 or 2. You'll have time to showcase more and go more in depth during the next stages of the interview processes.
Awesome. Here's another one for you. Now, this is an excellent question as well. I think a lot of people will benefit from the answer on this one. What is your recommendation on how many years to lay out your professional experience on your resume?
Yeah, so I would always dedicate the last 2 positions you have had. Those are going to be front and center because that's going to be your most recent. For as far as years go, I mean, usually I would say within the last 10 years or the last decade is going to suffice. But you want to get a little bit more elaborative in your last position or your most recent position. And then as you start going down chronologically into the past, you can kind of shrink them up a little bit, maybe not as many bullet points. But usually within the last 10 years, that's going to be the breadth of your experience, what you bring to the table, the skills that you've accomplished. Try to keep it that if you have experience that's relevant to the position that may be outside that 10-year window, definitely mention that. But as you're going down chronological order, your most recent positions are going to be the most impactful. And then as you get down towards the bottom of your work education, you kind of just want to shorten those up. Maybe instead of 3 bullet points for your last 2 positions, maybe bring it down to 1 or 2 and go from there.
Awesome. Now, here's one I think, Monica, you may be able to answer this one. What advice do you have for someone looking to switch to a different department or a different type of job? How do you bridge the gap between skill sets of where you were versus where you want to go?
Yeah, Cedric, that's actually a great question. In fact, I personally have had to do the same thing when joining Cox. I would go back to the preparation in your personal story, really understanding the job description for what you're trying to apply for, and then going back through your experiences and bridging. And you may, I mean, depending on how you do it, you may want to create a visual process map almost, where you outline all of your experiences in terms of skills and outcomes, and then start marrying that to the actual job description and then start building your story accordingly by bridging how your skills in your last job will transfer over to this new industry or this new role. And then always make sure you can either quantify or reiterate, or I should say iterate, the value proposition you bring. It really comes down to your personal brand, but taking the time to map out the skill sets you've learned in your past roles and how that bridges over into this new role and how you would bring value to it. Because oftentimes you'll discover insights that the hiring manager wouldn't have even thought of because of that broad experience base or just the different perspective of those particular skills.
That question, that answer just covered a lot of questions. There are quite a few people who are interested in, moving from one area to another. So appreciate that, Monica. And here's a good comment that I would love to hear Eric follow up on. One of our, well, it's more of a statement. He says, it's impossible to summarize a 20-year plus work history in 1 to 2 pages. That would only be the summary. Would you mind elaborating a little bit on that, Eric? Because he is right.
Yeah, so I guess it just depends on what your job that you're applying for is. So, I mean, there's going to be some stuff that may or may not be relevant. So you'll have to kind of discern what will apply to that job. A good way to kind of just cross-check that is to look at the job description for what you're applying for. Look at what the qualifications are. Look at the body of that job description, and kind of tailor it to what you're looking for. 20 years of work experience is fantastic. But it's really, you want to keep this between 1 or 2 pages. And I say that because if it does start getting circulated or internally or picking up steam, where a hiring manager becomes interested, they're not going to be able to sort through all those pages. It's going to be kind of a challenge. So my point to that would be, list what is relevant. If you have, let's say in 20 years, you've had 10 jobs and all of them are relevant, I would point out the first 2, or actually the one maybe that you had the longest tenure in, really go into detail on that and then kind of start to tail off. It's okay to not list a bullet point for a job that you've had. That's something that you can bring up in a phone interview or in a hiring manager interview, but really focus on kind of your most recent positions. That's going to be kind of where that knowledge is going to lie and what they're looking for. And then if you need to elaborate, like I said, it depends on the job that you're applying for. If it's definitely relevant, cross-check that with the job description, see, and then, if you need to, definitely maybe you want to highlight that and go from there.
Awesome. And this next question, I think, is a good one for Monica, because there are, again, quite a few people who have this question. So I think hearing from a person who does do a lot of hiring, I think this question would be great. If you have a large gap in your professional work experience due to family, personal reasons, how should that be addressed on your resume or online profile?
Yeah, I have seen that more and more, especially given, COVID and that impacting everyone's life. And, frankly, whether it's personal or, maternity leave and whatnot, honestly, I think it's good to be transparent. And I know that's a scary thing because mentally people, there's a little bit of anxiety to explain those gaps, but I'd be transparent. Personally, as a hiring manager, I have a lot of respect for people who have to take time off, whether it's to care for a family member, a child, whatever it is. And I think it's best to be transparent than to leave that void in the conversation. Obviously, it's a personal choice, but I've just found that transparency is the best answer. And I'll tell you, it'll tell you a lot about a company culture as well when you see how the interviewer or hiring manager reacts to that. Honestly, it says a lot about a company, but I think transparency is the best way to address that.
Absolutely. I agree 100% with that. Open and honest. It's always the best policy. And I think we have a little bit of time for a few more questions. And this is another one that I'm seeing recurring. How do you find a hiring manager for a posted job or a company website on a company website or LinkedIn? You want to take that one, Eric, or I can field that one?
Yeah, sure. You're gonna have to get creative. It's gonna be it's kind of like fishing in a very large pond, so to speak. So first thing I would start off with, if it's a company that you're interested in working for, go on LinkedIn, go on their website, start looking at their about me, their mission statement. There's gonna be contact information somewhere. You just got to find it. So start looking and trying to find that contact information either on their website or on LinkedIn. And then once you're at LinkedIn or you know the company, I would just start looking at managers. Like, for example, if you know you want to get into project management, well, that project manager probably has a boss or a leader, and that person is going to be either a director or supervisor of project management, order management. So you kind of got to get a little intuitive, a little creative, and try to find those folks. If it's like, let's say it's sales job, like an account executive position for Cox Business, there's going to be a sales leader, a sales manager, or a director of sales. So you'll be able to find them. You might have to do some digging on LinkedIn, but even if it's not the right person, the least you could do is just ask or try to ask them to point you in the right direction. Oftentimes, they will say, "Oh yeah, XYZ is actually overseeing this department. You want to check out their profile, or here's their email." The other thing too is I always tell people is maybe try to see if you can schedule informational interviews with some leaders, 15 to 30 minutes, virtual coffee, and just kind of see if you can get in that way. That's always a really good option. It may not be the person that you're meaning to talk to or is able to help you, but the idea there is that hopefully they can kind of get you in a little bit further into the company's network.
And here's another juicy one for you, Eric. This is a good one, and I'm sure a lot of people they have kind of hinted at this question. How do you recommend responding to the salary question?
Yeah, so salary is it's oftentimes it's like a difficult or challenging subject for a lot of people to approach. Some positions will openly advertise their salary, and that all can come down to the company or even down to state laws. If you are trying to get into the salary position, I would probably wait until you are contacted by a recruiter. And I also would wait. I wouldn't make it the most important thing. There's another old adage out there. If you really like what you're doing, the money will come. So don't make it the most important thing of what you're trying to get. I understand, salary is important. It's all how we make a living and feed our families. But to get to that kind of navigate that topic, I mean, if you're in like a phone interview, if you're with me, I usually bring up the salary. I will kind of talk about a range and see if it's in a workable or comfortable amount for a candidate. And go from there. Most of the time, though, companies, they're not going to have that information up front through the first couple layers of interviews. They'll only be able to give you a very high level overview of maybe the comp structure, where this might come in at. And then oftentimes, as you get further along in the process, compensation analysis requests will be done. And they're going to, reach out to usually their comp department, and they'll look at an applicant's application, resume, work history, tenures, certification, degrees, and then they're going to also evaluate the group equity. So, where are the incumbents at in a current role? But I would say an appropriate time to ask that would probably be more towards maybe the end of a phone interview. If you get to that stage or somewhere in the middle, I wouldn't make it the most important aspect. The recruiter is there to capture information for you to present to the hiring manager. So you want them to accomplish that because they want to get you presented. And then once they're done with their questions, that's certainly an appropriate question if they can share with you an idea. I would kind of, go from there. And then as you get a little bit further in the process, if you're starting to get the sense that you're, maybe escalating to a final interview or a VP type interview, that, is something, then you can touch base with the recruiter again and just kind of make sure you're aligned a little bit and go from there. And as far as offers, when offers go out and whatnot, that's when you would want to start entering your negotiation phase after an offer is presented. and go from there. And again, your recruiter should help you out, be able to kind of guide you and navigate those different intricacies of the candidate application and offer process.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah, your recruiter should definitely be able to help you out with that. So we're down to our last few minutes. I mean, this has been fantastic. I hope everyone is finding a lot of value in it. I'm having a lot of fun, and I think the information is incredible that you guys are receiving today. So put this all into practice. You know, your dream jobs are out there waiting for you. You know, it all starts with you. Just make up your mind, figure out what it is you want to do, what type of company that you want to work for, and that's half the battle. You know, once you get that figured out, put some of these things that Monica and Eric have discussed today, put those things into practice, and you'll be surprised. Your dream job is right there waiting for you. So with that being said, I believe we are all done. Did I miss anything, Eric, Monica?
No, all good here. Yeah, it was a great time. Thanks very much, Cedric and Monica.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Great, great. Well, you guys join that talent network. Keep your eyes on our job boards, and hey, find the recruiters, find the managers. We're right here. And you know, here at Cox, we are again employee first. We really look out for the community. We're more than happy to help as much as we can. You know, so put that best foot forward and go get that dream job.
Good luck, everyone.
Good luck, guys, and thank you so much for attending.
Thank you, everyone.